You are listening to the Zenith transmissions, channeled dialogues exploring consciousness, mutation, and the unfolding human story.
Transmission 8, February 12th, 2024. Settling into your chair now, relaxing the body and relaxing the breath, allowing it to flow naturally in and out the nose. Allow the belly to rise and fall as you lift your awareness to the point between the eyebrows now, raising your consciousness, connecting to the highest source of information and wisdom. Feeling clear and connected. Deeply relaxed, mind awake, body asleep. Are you ready? What is being created during sex?
In the Gene Keys, Richard Rudd says there is no two, there is only three and one, because 1 + 1 makes the third being. Meaning, when two things unite, they cease to be their separate selves, but also cease to be just their own union, and instead create a third life that is the unified form of their union. This can be expressed as a child, and often does, but this also expresses many other ways.
How can we use sex to consciously create?
The key is in the words you just used, of conscious creation. Most mindlessly create. It is still creation, but when you are intentional and refine the efforts of your creation, you begin to make creations which are more closely the likeness of what you are wanting. Often we create the desire of our subconscious mind, which is running at the point of creation. With conscious creation, however, we are curating the creation.
How would you define self-love?
The highest expression of self-love is self-knowing, and then self-authenticity. When we know ourselves and our highest form of expression, but choose a path unaligned with this, we are not loving ourselves, but instead a version of self that is a projection and not a semblance of self.
Is self-love important?
It is important to get to the point of self-forgetting, but not in the way one might imagine. When one truly understands their form, and by this we mean the form that they took on to express in this life, when we understand and express this form, then instead of self-obsession, which is an ever-constant modification of oneself to become the ideal projection we would like to fit, we can actually release those thoughts of self because our actions are always in alignment with the natural expression of self. It is then an easy flow, like water, where one does not need to always look and examine oneself and say, is this right for me? Is this how I want to look, feel, do? The thought can fade from the self as natural outpouring of the expression of self happens. In one sense, the path to self-forgetting is self-understanding.
What is meant by this?
If one comes in as a red beam of light, and the red beam of light looks at itself each day and says, I hate my red light. I love green light. I wish I was the color of grass, the color of trees, and the feeling of freshness. I am the feeling of intensity, the feeling of movement, the color of roses. But I will paint myself green and live as if I were fresh and calm. Now, in that misalignment of self, we don't actually have red or green. We just have a muddied sense of self that doesn't feel loving or validating, but only confused and misaligned. To have self-love in this scenario is to understand that you are a red light, to accept your red light and your energy and all the things you are naturally like. When you can simply be the most accurate, natural expression of self, then your self-obsession falls away, because instead of doing, you are being, and are the purest form of yourself, while not needing to think about yourself much at all.
What does it look like to practice?
To practice self-love is to practice acceptance, to seek to understand your chosen form and then honor the expression of that self you exhibit.
Is it ever detrimental?
These words self-love have been used in detrimental ways. Self-focus is what self-love can often be confused for. But true, pure expression of the self cannot be detrimental, because it isn't something that you do or try for. It is simply an allowing of being, a choosing in alignment with who you are.
What is the most efficient way for this channel to communicate with you?
In the sensing, do you mean what is the best way for that to be expressed?
What is the best way for her to relay your messages?
It depends on the audience. Sometimes we just put the thought in her head to pass along to a specific person, in which it would be through spoken word. But she has experienced channeling through many other forms, even physical expression, creation, and the written word.
What message do Americans need to hear right now?
Do not get attached to certain ways of doing things. Learn how to be very adaptable. Know what things are most important and have ways to build them into your life, no matter what life looks like. Find things that can't be taken from you to invest your time and energy into, and be extremely resourceful. Don't depend on any system or organization to have your best interests in mind. Learn how to be happy and content in all things, in all situations.
What things cannot be taken away?
Peace, memories, the realms outside of the physical plane, if you can tap into them, sources of information in the same way. If you understand that all things are eternal, then while systems and certain ways of doing things may change, and our access to them, you understand that we don't really ever have to lose the things we fear losing, like people. We just have to change how we meet or interact with them. We get creative. Death and change doesn't have to be a fear if they can't limit your ability to connect with that which is important to you. And this is the same as being resourceful. The dumb dog is the dog that, when a wall is built between him and his food, sits and waits for the wall to move and think he can no longer have his food. The smart dog, however, figures out how to get around the wall and understands that what he wants is just on the other side of this perceived obstacle.
How can we preserve or improve our memory?
Memories are hidden from our conscious thought often, out of protection or choice. To preserve our memory, we can attach something of value to it, or a sensory experience, a song, a smell, a way of feeling. We must also trust that we will know what we need to remember when it is time to remember it.
What can you tell us about how a child develops?
A child comes into this world remembering all things, so it is a funny question to see it as developing. We are more realistically aiding a child in non-developing or forgetting. This is a process of letting go and reshaping. When one chooses form, they choose to let go of memories so that they can hold space for this life and this form. In the same way we choose to empty ourselves in order to bring in more information, we must let our old selves go to experience this focused form of life. What we have not fully understood is how painful this can be for children. To remember and not be able to access the past can feel like a death when they are being born. We can support them in this forming of the self by comforting their cries, helping them curate their sense of self and form expression. We can learn from their remembrances while they have them and allow it to inform their flavor in this life.
What can you tell us about how a child develops spiritually?
A child develops spiritually by its environment or non-physical surroundings. We give them connection and union with us, which is how they experience both the separate self and the non-separate self, which is something they are navigating at this time in a very tangible way. This is why children often experience separation anxiety. The secure child is taught that just because one cannot see or touch the adult in their life does not mean they are not alive or in connection with them anymore. In the same way, this child begins to spiritually understand that even if they at times feel separate from God, they are not in fact, and have access whenever it is needed. In the same way that the dog in the above example doesn't see his food, but we know it is on the other side of the wall, a baby learns that if they cry, their parent comes, even if they have walked out of the room. We work to create safe attachment so the soul can have a secure sense of self and also a secure sense of connection outside of the self. It is when a child gets the message that there is nothing but me that spiritual life begins to suffer. We are the first face of God to our children. What a privilege to teach them this lesson.
What can you tell us about how a child develops physically?
A child hardens as they develop physically. We experience our most profound physical growth from the ages of 0 to around the age of 15. The bones are born soft and mutable. Many open cavities are present. These fill in and harden with growth and development. It is like they are being written into form, and the more defined their sense of self becomes, the more permanent the body begins to hold the shape. The teeth become permanent, the bones harden into place, and at some point the growth that we saw comes to a pause or becomes almost imperceptible, even shrinking with old age and becoming less and less dense as the soul begins to shed this identity and form and leave the body in stages.
What can you tell us about how a child develops emotionally?
A child is using their emotions like a compass. Their life is a series of tests and trials, and with each one, they adapt and learn to either accumulate a skill or to change it for a different result. When emotions are uncomfortable, they adapt or change their responses, and when they are favorable, they will repeat these patterns again and again. These patterns become their subconscious programming and are very hard to break once they have settled in the same way that bones harden. The habits become ingrained.
What should parents focus on when they become parents?
They need to understand that this child is now the blended expression of selves. So in this way, you continue to be expressed in your child, either directly or indirectly. This can be triggering when your worst aspects of self are reflected back to you, and a great joy when your highest forms of self are mirrored. But the way in which you express yourself will play out in the life of the child you created. The best thing that you can provide for a child that you bring into this world is secure attachment. In this way, they will spiritually develop and learn healthy attachments to the divine and others.
How do we teach healthy attachments to the divine?
Giving a child tools to always have a connection with you, even when they feel they have failed or lost your approval or favor. A secure child knows that they always have access to the divine counsel and love in proportion to how they have learned and had access to yours. The need for self-soothing is just as important as a parent or other helping a child to soothe. We set an example for them and show them how we do this for ourselves. When we can guide a child, our ultimate goal is for them to also be able to guide themselves or be led by divine principles or leading as our own needs and environment, or leading as our own principles and counsel. We can set healthy boundaries by showing them how, at times, we look out for our own needs. When we have those times of meeting someone outside of ourselves or helping them to regulate when they do, we teach them that they don't just have themselves in this world. But by teaching them how to identify their core self and their needs, now they have the choice to meet those needs themselves or ask for others to help them meet them.
These transmissions are for the future human, for the ones who feel the shift, who sense the children are different, who know the old paradigms can't hold what's coming.
This concludes today's transmission. Let what you've heard settle softly. The next begins when you are ready.